Hey there, everybody. Meteorologist Jamie Singleton with you here. It is not 4 o'clock. It's more like 4:38. If you know me, you know that it takes me way longer to stream because I do it on my own from my home office. And sorry, I'm getting some new information. Let's see. Okay, I'm trying to get permission to use some stuff here to show you, but you can see there a split screen on the left side of your screen. You've got an enhanced view here. This is off of one of my other computers. I did have some different things going on with my main computer over the past few days, but Ian has made landfall as a very strong Category 4, perhaps a Category 5 storm. And we've had reports of up to 150, 155 mile per hour winds in that eye wall. Now, what makes it complicated is for you folks down into the Florida area, it came in off the southwest of the coast here. So that northern and most eastern eye wall isn't the most intense. It's actually the western eye wall. Southwest eye wall that we normally don't think about being the most intense, but at this angle that we're looking at here, if you picture the counterclockwise rotation there, everything kind of coming into Cape Coral there and into Fort Myers Beach, Naples, all that water now is coming in, and to the north the water has been going out. Luckily, Tampa St. Pete was spared just like Charlie, and I was actually in Hurricane Charlie. It did the exact same thing. It was supposed to come up and get Tampa like this, and what ends up happening for some reason, I think there's some frictional effect there on the coast that creates low pressure, but what ends up happening is the storm ends up turning farther inland sooner. And so whenever you're in Florida or you hear about an official forecast going into an area such as Tampa or whatever, I wouldn't say discount it immediately, but history has proven that these things will tend to come in a little bit farther south, in some cases significantly farther south than anticipated. And it's amazing because this was supposed to be basically let me move my positioning here. I'm using Splash Top over OBS, so it's a little bit taxing here. But you can see the Tampa St. Pete area right there. And let me get you caught up here on bearings. So right in through here is where Charlie was supposed to hit. Way at the top of your screen. Let me move that back down. There's a little delay. There we go. All right, so what I'm trying to show you here is originally back in 2004, I was sent down to WFLA from WSLS. That was our sister station, and that's channel 8 down there. We thought we were going to get Charlie, and that was going to be a very high storm surge there at the TV station. Channel 8 is right there at the bay. What ended up happening is it hit Punta Gorda. Now look at where this storm is. The eye over Punta Gorda. So that same error, that same amount of distance ended up verifying once again. So Punta Gorda got Charlie, and it got this storm as well. Cape Coral also there again on that western eye wall, where you're seeing an enormous amount of storm surge, and we do have extreme, what we call, used to call eye wall wind warnings, basically extreme wind warnings. They treat them as tornado warnings. It's basically like you're looking at an EF3, EF4 tornado over a large area. So you can see the damage that's being done there. Let me take you now to another view. These are wind gusts here, and this is in motion over our high-resolution satellite picture. You can see that we've had 123 mile per hour winds reported at Port Charlotte there. These are by the official weather stations. Now, within those, you're still going to be seeing a lot more higher gusts there, probably unofficial reports there from some of the backyard weather stations. But you do see that black area there that's kind of outlined and has that white outline with it. This is the extreme wind warning, which is in effect, and that's about the most serious kind of threat that you can face in a situation like this, because we are not said and done. Landfall's already been made here. The eye now is filling in a bit, and this will weaken some, but you can see the wind field all the way up to Tampa. They've got gusty and winds up to 40, 60, 76 miles per hour, but right near the core of the storm. And I was explaining this to my, have some relatives that were in the Tampa area, trying to get some work done this week, and had horrible timing. But I did mention you've got to get, if you're really concerned about, and I'm not discounting the storm, but you've got to be right in this central dense overcast. So the eyes here, you really got to get in this exponentially higher area of wind and storm surge to get the really big damage. That's not to say there's not going to be a significant amount of damage across the entire state, because we do have far-reaching effects in situations like this. But what I'm saying is, right where the eye wall is where most of the storm surge and most of that significant damage is. And you can see much of the state there gusting up to, even the buoys there still gusting on the backside, up to 81 miles per hour. Water temperatures were very warm for this thing, and now the severe potential there is ramping up as well. You can see a new tornado watch out for the east coast of Florida there as well. So this will continue tracking off to the north and to the east. And I've got the computer models here overlaid. You can see those individual lines. I'm going to zoom you out just a little bit here so you can see that. This is heading our way. and this is nothing to take lightly. If you've been following me on Patreon, you know that I've been very, very concerned about this getting up into here. These are the various lines. I know they're hard to see, so I'm going to kind of draw them for you. And we'll get back. I'll get back to my actual computer here in just a second. I'm accessing some of these remotely, so that's why you're seeing a little bit of a delay. But I do believe, depending on your connection, and I'm going to draw it in now. So this is the cone. And then these individual lines here are the computer models, the various computer models that are all kind of taking us back across Florida through Orlando. Orlando will get hit hard. Jacksonville could get hit hard. The coast of Georgia, this could reemerge over the Atlantic as either a weak hurricane or tropical storm. It could regain strength. Notice we've got also far-reaching bands there of lightning that are occurring with this. Lightning indicates basically tropical feeder bands that can produce tornadoes. We've had confirmed tornadoes in Florida. Again, you've got that extreme wind warning there on the western eye wall, showing us that we've got winds of over 120 miles per hour. They're gusting, and that's why you see that flashing there. That's an extreme wind warning, and again, it's about the most serious thing you can get in a hurricane. That's basically the eye wall warning, saying that there's going to be destruction continuing in that area. Speaking of that, I do have some cameras here, and I can't show you much of it. This is from Severe Studios, and that's going to be at the bottom of your screen, the bottom left. This was earlier. You can see that this is Fort Myers Beach. The storm surge there coming in. This was just a few hours ago. You can see just a lot of wave action now. Normally this is a street across from the beach that would have no water on it. The hotel is back there, and the beach is behind the hotel. So you're seeing the circulation, and this is a storm surge, a mound of water. It basically takes the Gulf of Mexico. It does about 90% of the damage on the coast, and it also kills the most folks. This was a remote camera, but you can see the wave action on top of that. So you're looking at about 5 to 10 feet of storm surge there, and then you're looking at another 5 to 10 feet of wave action on top of that, and you can see the destruction that occurs. When I was in Isabel, that was a much weaker storm, but you had boards and nails and pieces of homes that were floating along. Water is a solid object when it moves. It's so dense and it's so heavy that it can create all kinds of issues there. So that's a major concern. But Severe Studios, if you go to their Facebook page, they're doing an awesome job of showing you some of that. And earlier, again, they had, see if I can pop that up. This was more of a full screen thing, but let me go back here. This was one of the islands there that was off the coast there, one of the barrier islands, and you can't see anything. This is basically the eye wall, but occasionally here you will see waves crashing on top of that, the foam there ripping up, and you can know the palm tree there almost being ripped to shreds here. That's 155 mile per hour winds gusting to probably 170 not too long ago. So that was a major blow, and some areas are still getting hit like this, of course. And then later into this video here, you start to see the storm surge increase even more. This is as the eye wall actually got right up on this camera here. So you see the debris there. The camera's now sideways, and you can also see it's just very violent. But that's water, the ocean, crashing over the camera. And that's what does the damage. That's what's killing people in hurricanes when we talk about that. So it can be pretty scary, but we try to let you know what's going on ahead of time so you can get on out of Dodge, as they say. Okay, back to the actual computer here. This is the one I had to reprogram and bring in all the color palettes from. So for you local folks watching, I do want to let you know in Virginia, this is coming, and it's going to be here. Let me resize this real quick, and let me take off. There we go. Take off some of these other sources here. But you can see the hurricane there. There's an enhanced satellite picture, and then you see the spaghetti plots that are posted for you right here. So this is the cone. And what's happening is we've got a trough in the atmosphere that's curving down and wanting to pick this up. So that's why it's moving a little bit to the north and to the east right now. This trough is going to relent a bit, and then a new trough is going to come in to our west as we go into Friday and Saturday. And at the same time, we're going to see a ridge develop off the Florida coast. Now, this is something that almost no one's talking about, but that ridge is going to help steer this back into the Carolinas, and you can see this clustering of computer models here, putting it right into our mountains. This would be Friday night, mainly going into Saturday night, and perhaps Sunday. Whenever you see the cone become a circle, that's an indicator of slower movement. So it gets up here and it could stall out or loop around and then move east. The only way I see us not getting a lot out of this would be if this were to stay south and just do this. And that's possible. You can see the front here. By the way, we've already had some high clouds coming off of Ian indirectly. I've got a time lapse running of that. You can see that little cirrus veil there if you pay very careful attention. It's kind of indirectly associated with this front and Ian at the same time. So that's just to give you an idea of the overall picture. You can see the flow here is out of the north, but if you pop on the model data, you can actually see what's going on. So what I'm going to do is show that to you now. I've got several instances of this program running. That was one reason I wanted to make sure this computer was back up to full spec here. And this is going to look a little confusing, so we're going to go through it together. But this is the GFS model, and I've got the jet stream winds overlaid here. Let me make sure I get you the whole screen and the picture. Hold on one second here. I didn't really have a lot of time to set this up today. Believe it or not, I spent a great deal of time on this over the past couple of days. This takes us again into October the 1st, the 2nd. October the 1st would be what? Saturday, and Sunday would be the 2nd going into Monday. Now what you're seeing underneath here, those brighter colors that look like kind of pastel Eastery colors there in the pink, those are rainfall totals underneath the actual forecast rain from the GFS. And again, these longer range models, as I explained on Patreon, are not going to be very accurate. They're basically just blobs that are going to be more accurate as we get closer. But we do see the potential for some very heavy rain. This is a tropical system. And so what I want to show you here is, watch this. Let's see. So we're going to go through time here. This is the jet stream. Notice how it's up here. It's pulling in clouds and moisture right now. Now with time, what happens is we start to see another dip cut off here, and that's what brings the trouble to this area. That's why I'm very concerned about western North Carolina, southwest Virginia, and much of Virginia, because this to me puts us right in the zone for a lot of rain. So you can see the track would go right in that cone there, and when it moves up like that, what you got to keep in mind is you've got counterclockwise winds coming in at the surface. So your wind's going to be coming in like this, and it's going to be hitting the mountains, and it's going to be wringing out enhanced areas of rain. And because the movement's going to slow down, we could be in a situation where rain bands circulate around this thing and remain in place, you can see here, well into Sunday night or Monday. The other concern I've got is on the eastern side of this, what you're going to see is a lot of wind shear. Again, you've got those southeasterly winds that'll be coming in, but your upper level winds are going to be coming in like this. Let me do that in a different color. Your upper level winds are going to be coming in, let me find a different color, like this. So you can see that crossing there. That's wind shear, and that is going to, if it encounters warm enough air, if we don't get wedged in, we'll see some embedded thunderstorm activity, and this will be tropical air. This is nothing to mess around with. In fact, if you look at some of the totals here on the rainfall. Got to reload the loop here. And it's not going to let me show you those totals, but we're looking at 6 to 10 inches of rain possible within this cone here, where you're seeing those higher amounts of rain. But you can see how much the rain lingers. It doesn't look particularly heavy, again, because it's the GFS model. We're not out to where we can show you the NAM just yet, and the NAM's just getting an idea of what happens. But this will eventually draw in the tornado threat if it continues on this path, because it will take some of this higher level moisture there off the coast, and it will start bringing it in. So this concerns me if you live in Savannah, Columbia, South Carolina. Myrtle Beach could get hit very hard here coming up Friday, going into Saturday. Inland areas of Charlotte, Hickory, Asheville, Bristol, you all need to be on guard, because this could be a very serious situation. Let's go back down to the coast and check out what's going on. I've got the live radar picture on here for you, and there's Port Charlotte there. So let's go in and see what's going on with the very, very latest. We've got flash flood warnings in effect. You can see the eye right there between North Fort Myers and Port Charlotte. Again, pretty much Punta Gorda there. Let me see if I can get more cities here to pop up here as well. This program has so many different options that it's almost crazy to even think about here. So I believe we want high tolerance, and we want it to go this way. There we go. North Fort Myers. Just getting a few more places here to pop up. You can see these special weather statements too. You don't see this every day. A special weather statement for 100-mile-per-hour winds there from North Naples inland. And you can see Fort Myers is right here. So that Fort Myers and Fort Myers Beach, they were in the worst possible place, and still are. With this eye wall that's continuing to circulate here, because again, it's all about the direction. You've got a counterclockwise storm here, and you've got at the angle it's coming in, and let's pause it here as a new radar scan comes in. But at this angle it's coming in, that puts Fort Myers Beach and Cape Coral right in there. And in fact, as the storm continues to move up to the north toward Arcadia, Avon Park, Fort Meade, and Lake Placid here, you're going to continue to see some onshore flow pushing into some of these bend areas, some of these barrier islands, and still some flooding there expected as well. There's Okeechobee. And by the way, there's still a chance of tornadoes well away from the system as well. And when it gets up here, I do think we're going to have outer bands that will eventually give us some at least tornado probabilities as it moves a little bit closer. What I've got here laid out for you here is what's called the Energy Helicity Index. This is an index that computes the potential for rotation and spin, and I've got that there so you can see there's a lot of wind shear in this as well. Zooming it out, you can see that's a better view of what's going on. And then I don't have radar coverage. I've got the single site radars on there, so I'm going to erase those. And you will see just the overall look at where this is going to be headed. And I've got the topography on here as well. So as we go into the upcoming weekend, this is what's going to be happening. We're going to be looking at something like, let's draw with red. It'll either be a tropical storm or a tropical depression or remnants, but it should be a tropical storm around Columbia, I think, and then it gets up to around Johnson City and Abington by Saturday night. It could stall here, and that would be again bringing in lots and lots of moisture, lots of rain bands. And don't let it fool you, because what may happen is we'll see some breaking up of this. The wind field will expand outward as the storm weakens. So while the winds near the center are going to go down, the winds out here are going to go up because just the expansion of that inertia. And so you're going to start to see some 20, 25, maybe 30, 40 mile per hour winds, especially on some of these ridge tops. But the other concern, moisture-wise, if you get in here a little bit closer, you can see the Blue Ridge Mountains here, right? And so the problem is you've got the mountains lined up basically from northeast to southwest, and then you've got the moisture that'll be coming in from the southeast. And in all my studies I've done about flooding in this area, you can see the Blue Ridge runs right through here. In all the studies I've done, a lot of our flooding occurs when you have moisture that upslopes, that's enhanced like that, when it comes up against the mountains like that. So really concerned about this area here as we go. That's basically the foothills south and west of Roanoke, but also the entire area, because we're also looking at, again, that wind shear probability that could be taking place. So you notice all the models are in this cone. If the cone was a little bit farther east, what would we hope for in the best case scenario? For our local area, we would want to see this more like this. Okay, but that's not looking likely right now. It looks like that second disturbance is going to pull it in a little bit across the mountain. So that's almost a worst case scenario, and it really does have me concerned. And that's why I've got so much on Patreon. I'm going to be having a lot more on Patreon too later on tonight. Let's see if I'm forgetting anything, because I do like to pull up a lot of imagery here. Here's a higher resolution look at the radar with some street level mapping there from WeatherTap. You can see Tampa, St. Pete. We've got some storm reports here. And some of the storm reports do not have the actual wind data with them, but we do know that some of these 97 mile per hour winds reported at James City, Mesonet site, 84 mile per hour at Ding Darling. Let's see, wind gust of 105 reported at Earth Network site, 78 mile per hour here. So that is Collier County, getting into North Fort Myers here. And then as you zoom in a little bit here, this is where, you know, Sanibel Island, that was the first camera there I showed you. That was Sanibel Island getting it, taking it on the chin. And you can see the 100 mile per hour gust there reported there. 97, 100, 126. I think that's the biggest I've seen. But we do have video coming in from NBC News of cars submerged in like 5 to 10 feet of water. 110 mile per hour gust. This is inland now, a little bit more in the Port Charlotte, not inland, but farther north. 110 mile per hour gust reported from a weather station in Port Charlotte, and that's fairly recent. 79 miles per hour. They're now in the eye in Charlotte County, Florida. Burnt Storm Marina, South Punta Gorda Heights is in the eye of the storm. Punta Gorda is just in the eye, but the eye wall is now moving up into Soto County and will be moving into Highlands County and, let's see, Arcadia here pretty soon here. This is in Florida. Let's see if I can put this in motion here for you, just to give you an idea. And you can see that storm surge there continuing in the Fort Myers. Again, that's courtesy of Severe Storms Studios. And as that loads, you can see that counterclockwise swirl. These hurricanes will tend to hold their heavier rain offshore as long as possible. They have this internal mechanism where they try to survive. And we saw that today, right before landfall. We had a lot of the heavier bands actually offshore. But now in Sarasota County and DeSoto County and areas, even getting up in the Tampa, St. Pete, now we're starting to see more of the central dense overcast. That's the area nearest the eye wall. so to speak, without being in the eye wall. So you've got the immediate eye wall here, then you've got these outer bands, but they break apart the farther away you get. So St. Pete here and Apollo Beach, this area here in Manatee County here, now seeing a little bit more probably northeasterly winds that are pushing the water out, but you're still seeing a lot of wind damage, I'm sure, and a lot of flooding going on in that area. And not to be outdone, we also do have some tornado reports that are coming in here. Brief tornadoes, they tend to be very brief, very hard to see via radar, but we've got one. Let's see, that was in Brevard, Florida. Social media video showed a brief tornado supported by radar crossing Highway 192 just east of the Brevard County line. That was at 3:29 p.m. So tornadoes will continue to be an issue here on the northeast side, and again, it's because the winds are being drawn into the storm, but the upper level winds are starting to pick up the storm and move it on out of the area. So these are the computer model plots. Again, this is the very latest. That was at 12Z. Let's see if I can get an update here from 18Z. That's the 28th. That's today. Okay, so this is the very latest now, the 18Z guidance. And again, it pulls it across Florida, and then it brings it back into the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico, where it could strengthen a little bit or get a little more organized. But again, this is the center, okay? These lines do not represent the impacts. So if we were to pick the middle line, just out of curiosity, you're going to have impacts well away from that middle line. You've got to keep that in mind. Any of these models that verify are going to have impacts well away from the center. So you kind of have to think about this whole area in here as having impacts. But anyway, the storm continues to weaken as it moves inland, but it may still do a lot of deciduous tree damage here across Columbia, South Carolina, inland areas that just aren't prepared for hurricane force winds. The trees, they'll come down. You'll see some power outages here. But this is 72 hours from now. It gets up into our area. And again, some of these have it going up to Centersville, Smith Mountain Lake, hanging out, and then moving east. But again, you've got a counterclockwise rotation around that. And so there may be a little bit of a wedge of cooler, more gentle rain to the north. And then to the south, you may start to see the tornado threats. So I'd say anywhere to the, whichever model you want to believe, anywhere to the east of the track and south of the track, that's going to be your tornado threat. Anywhere along and to the east and or west, you've got the flood threat. And that's pretty much going to be almost for everybody, and especially the way it hangs out here. Some of them curve back and some of them curve east, but this is not a good area to be in our area for flooding. And again, I've got on my Patreon some of the latest guidance from overnight, but I'm about to update that this evening. I've got about 3 to 4 posts I'm going to be updating, and I'll do another video update for you now that I've got some of my computers there working. So let's look at the GFS model. This is actually the Euro from today, just to kind of show you what's going on. And this is kind of a sneak peek here, so you can see that it does reemerge over the Atlantic, pulls back west, north and west. It does weaken, but look at all the rain that you've got out ahead of that. That easterly flow, that southeasterly flow, remember your winds are going to be counterclockwise around this low, and do not concentrate on where the low is itself. Remember, you can see those far-reaching rain bands all the way up to DC. It'll be raining in New York from this system, kind of merging with this front here as it becomes extratropical. Now, this is Saturday night going into Sunday. Notice it hangs out here. This is more of a cooler rain, but still a steadier rain here, if you believe this particular model, going into Sunday night into Monday. But there's some energy there. That's why it's swirling. It's upper level energy that gets stuck. And to show you that a little bit more in detail, I've got this up. This is vorticity and spin. I know it's complicated to look at, but what I want you to look at here, and we'll put a detailed Patreon post out about this. This is the trough that could have picked this storm up and moved it out to sea, right? So the wind's coming down like this. And you can see part of that got up underneath that. That's what brought it into Punta Gorda and not Tampa. The problem is, look what happens as we go through time here. As we go into Friday, the trough kind of pulls out and leaves the storm behind. So it continues kind of moving north and east, and that's why it reemerges here over the southeast coast, off the coast of Georgia and South Carolina. But what's critical is there's a piece of the trough, a piece of spin, if you will. I know that's not technically correct, but this is the trough itself. You still have all this lingering energy back here, okay? So keep an eye on that, because what's going to happen is this is going to come around and merge with the hurricane or tropical system or Ian, whatever it is by that point. And that's why it's going to pull in. It's almost going to create its own upper level low. So as I've drawn that, now watch it in motion here. This is Thursday night going into Friday. See how it's all merging? And then it forms its own upper level low and intensifies actually. And I'll zoom you in a little bit more so you can see it. This is Friday night going into Saturday, and the upper level part of the system becomes its own thing with tropical rainfall. Okay, so we want to keep an eye on that. We also want to keep an eye on the fact that this tropical rainfall holds an incredible amount of moisture. If you were to look at the percentage of moisture, you would see that those greens and blues, that's not a good thing. That's 200 to 250% are moisture. And when we study flooding, we look at that. We look at the fact that look at all the dry air we had earlier. It was so sunny and nice. That's why it felt so cold in the mornings. Now we're bringing in a tropical air mass. So any storm that develops, and they will be in bands probably coming up this weekend for some, but you're going to have an upslope flow and very efficient rainfall. That means when it rains, it could put down 3 or 4 inches of rain in a real quick amount of time. The Euro today still has up to about 3 to 4 inches of rain, but if you actually pixel query it, you've got amounts there near 6 inches. Now, I'm very concerned because the Euro and the GFS are not near resolution models. They have a lower resolution, so we can put them out faster in time. So the NAM, when it gets within the range of the NAM and the HER and the RAP and the other models we use, you can see some of these solutions even up to DC here, 7 to 8 to 9 inches. It's going to just depend on where the bands develop, and that's what I meant about far-reaching impacts. But you can see there, Boone there at 4.63. That's the Euro model. But again, you can look at all the different ones here, and you can see much the same. Roanoke at 5.2 inches. Look down here in the mountains in North Carolina, 8 to 9 inches from Hickory all the way up into Galax, maybe 5-6 inches. This is just a guess. Don't pay too much attention here, but notice it's keying in on that upslope that I was talking about. And so overall, you would go maybe 2 to 4 inches overall, but you're going to have isolated amounts up to 5 to 8 inches, I think, going into the next few days, and that's very concerning. And again, the reason is it's merging with the jet stream, which is going to be pulling all of this up with it here. So if I were to resize this again, and I apologize for not having it completely resized, but this is what we call a predecessor rainfall event, where we've got the jet stream basically pulling in, siphoning the moisture. So this is the jet streak here. So this is really not associated with the storm. This is associated with the main belt of the westerlies, but it's close enough to the hurricane to where this zone right here begins pulling the moisture out ahead of it. And that's why we're seeing increasing clouds across the area tonight. As we go through time here, you can see that jet stream actually stays in place, and begins to blow more out of the south as it merges with that upper level energy. And our winds actually become more southerly as well. You're looking at those winds now pushing in out of the south. This is Friday afternoon, and in this area right here, you tend to get a lot of lift. And so there will be some rain maybe developing quicker Friday than I originally thought if I look at that image and take it verbatim there. Then we go into Saturday, and even though the winds are weaker, you still have that dip in the jet stream right here, and it's negative tilt. We talk about negative tilt. We talk about the fact that it's like that. So you've got an incredible amount of lift coming out of the east side of that. And this is a Sunday morning, and your jet streak is still right here. So you're still looking at a lot of lift in that area too. And again, that's why the rain's going to be prolonged, we think, as that second area moves in. And then finally, Monday into Tuesday, we start to get more of a westerly flow, which is a good thing. The only thing is we still do have an upper level low sitting right here. So there still is going to be some scattered showers probably popping up and moving in from the west. And finally then on Tuesday, I think we'll probably hopefully get more of a ridge to pop up here and clear things out. But I'd say through Monday, we're going to be in a precarious situation when it involves the potential for flooding and even severe weather. Finally, I will show you the NAM. Let's see if we've got an 18Z run in yet here. Yeah, the 18Z is in. So you can see Virginia there. Now let me move this back. So this is right now. This is tonight. You can see the rain starts in the coast as the hurricane begins to move inland. This is Friday morning. So yeah, now I think the rain starts Friday morning. The model supports it. The jet stream that I just looked at supports it. And by the way, I don't look at competition. I don't look at anything else other than just the weather. And so I was looking at the jet stream and hadn't even pulled this model up yet, and was able to kind of discern that I thought the rain would start earlier Friday than expected. So I think it's going to be raining Friday by lunchtime. And that's some pretty good rain right there. That's some moderate to heavy rainfall. You've also got some very strong storm activity there over Myrtle Beach, and some rotation there as well, all the way down to Charleston. My computer guy, Terry, I'm sorry, you're going to be trying to travel in this. It's going to be a mess going to Myrtle Beach Friday. You may want to rethink those plans. This gets pulled again in through Columbia, just around the Charlotte area, basically up into Asheville and the mountains of North Carolina. Notice the breaks that occur in here. Don't let that fool you, because any little break of sunshine is going to energize these outer bands here. This is looking at Friday night. So Friday night we could be looking at possible flash flooding. We do have dry ground across a good part of the area, but if you look at the significant tornado parameter, you're going to see these amounts stay fairly low, as we do see with tropical systems, but the fact that they're there is concerning. So it begins to pull in those higher values there. It doesn't go out quite as far, but eastern North Carolina by Friday night starts to see a little bit more in the way of a tornado threat. And if I look at the lower resolution NAM, which goes out to 84 hours, this is going to take us, I think, in the Saturday night. There's Friday night. And you can start to see that it does go into Lynchburg and Southside Appomattox County there. A little bit farther east, that's good, but I think with a farther west track, there's a chance that this could get pulled in. But you folks from Richmond, Virginia Beach, I'd say Highway 29 and east, and Eastern Carolina from Raleigh east down to Myrtle Beach, Wilmington, Fayetteville, need to watch for tornadoes coming up Friday and possibly into Saturday as well, based on what I'm seeing right there. So that's a look at it. Again, Sarasota County getting hit very hard right now with that eye wall, and I'll have some more streaming coming up later tonight when I can get a better audience. Here's another look at kind of a split screen here. We've got, again, extreme wind warnings in effect continuing around that eye wall. Just a huge mess and a lot of destruction, unfortunately, in that area. As you can see, those waves battering Cape Coral, and also Fort Myers Beach there. You've got extreme wind warnings still in effect, lots of flooding going on. Tampa, you were spared with this, but there's still going to be some inland effects all the way up through Lake Placid, Avon Park, going into perhaps Kissimmee here coming up in the next few hours. Okeechobee will be on the outer fringes of the southeast side of this, and then again it kind of reemerges with time here over the just south of Daytona Beach, and then going off the coast there. So watching that for you very carefully, because things do change, but right now it does look like for our area, and I'm talking about Virginia into western North Carolina and eastern North Carolina, really, much of Virginia here, we're going to be dealing with flooding and tornadoes. I will have another update coming up later on. That's all for now. Thanks for bearing with me with my technical stuff that I've had to get set up just about all day. Oh, let's just use it because I worked so hard to get it up here. Hold on one second. Let's go to... Some people say I have too many computers, and they're probably right. So this should load. Yeah, this is my GR Earth, which I don't have on my main computer yet, so I'm borrowing this from my older computer. There you see the canopy of clouds that are starting to move in today. And at one point this afternoon, you did see blue sky, where you see the brown here, it was blue. And in the NRV, you're probably seeing those clouds there. We should have an interesting sunset coming up, because this is already the jet stream pulling up the moisture aloft. So you could follow these high clouds and get an idea of where the storm's going to go. And you can see the National Hurricane Center has indeed that track, taking it as a Cat 1 back to a tropical storm, and then moving it back to right here. Looks like it'll be right over Boone there coming up for the weekend. But again, that puts that upslope going into our area. So things are starting to bend back around. And in fact, at the very top of the screen here, you can actually see one of the culprits here. This is some of the energy coming out of Oklahoma and Arkansas. I know it's hard to see, but it's kind of like when a doctor reads an x-ray. It's a little bit hard to see, but that's a little spin that's going to be digging down and helping to form this kind of low that's going to merge and bring out Ian from the south and from the east, as this trough here that would normally take it away is going to go away. You can see all the storm reports there as well. So things are going to get pretty active here coming up for the weekend. It's not the time to panic. It's the time for preparation, really. And we're going to see probably initially just a gentle rain. I'm going to tell my clients in Rocky Mount not to expect flooding initially, because we can use actually some gentle rain of 1 to 3 inches. We can actually handle that. It's these heavier bands, if they form. And again, a good example of that is right here. If you look off the coast, this is what I'm concerned about. Let's see if I can get... This demonstrates once it loads here. And I'll stop the animation. But what you see offshore there. All right, so right there. These bands that are developing. See those? This is going to be trouble, because again, the models you were looking at show where the center is going to go, but these are going to spiral into Virginia, into our area around. So let's say the center's over Boone. These will be spiraling in like this, and they may weaken at times, and then during the daytime you see all that instability shaded up underneath there in wind shear. That's the basically the supercell and significant tornado parameter. That's going to be elevated in areas I think from Roanoke and east once it gets into Boone. The one caveat would be if cooler air is able to wedge down into Virginia and keep in all this rain. But we would still deal with flooding, I think, in a situation like that. But within these rain bands, you're looking at probably 4 inches of rain per hour. And all that air over the tropical Atlantic, this is brought in, tropical air with it, is going to be brought into Virginia with this. Make no mistake about that. So keep in mind that while the center of the hurricane is right here, you're looking at far-reaching impacts, hundreds of miles to the east of that. And that's where you really don't want to be. I'll have more updates coming up for you tonight.